Hey, I'm Jay, and you're listening to the More Than podcast. I'm a former Miss Arizona USA, professional model, confidence coach, and red carpet host. Don't let those titles fool you, though. I'm a 30-year-old overly curious woman who loves to connect with others over the good, the bad, and the hilarious parts of our stories. From the outside looking in, my 20s looked really glamorous, but in reality, I struggled deeply with my confidence, self-worth, and mental health. I went on a deep healing journey to figure out how to live a life that felt as fulfilling as it looked, and now I help you do that too. I'm not afraid to go deep, and our guests aren't either. We talk all about mindset, mental health, confidence, relationships, beauty, boundaries, business, fashion, while giving you tangible tools for your own growth. This is one of those girl chats that leave you feeling inspired and empower you to stop settling and create a life you love. You're so much more than whatever's holding you back, and I'm so glad you're here. Mari, welcome to the More Than podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So excited.
I can't wait.
I'm giddy.
You're so sweet. I'm honored to be here. I think you're amazing and I'm so excited.
Girl, back at you. And I have to fangirl just to get it out of the way, because before we became friends, I was one of the millions, and I still am one of the millions, that was so inspired by you and inspired by your journey. And I think it's so cool to meet the people that you admire online in real life, and when they're 10 times better in real life, it makes it that much better, and that's exactly what you are. So I'm excited for our audience to get to know you better.
Thank you. You're so sweet, and it was like so lovely to meet you in person. I feel like Austin has been this amazing place to connect, and we got coffee together, and I immediately was like, oh my God, she's amazing. She's so sweet. And I appreciate the support so much.
Fast friends. Well, something I didn't tell you is that I have to tell you this whole story. I have to give you backstory too. Okay. So 10 years ago, I started my own little fitness journey where I signed up for a fitness competition. I lost 60 pounds in 3 months in a very unhealthy way. Unsustainable. I know, right? No. I went through metabolic damage. It totally gave me almost like gym trauma. I don't know if that's a real thing, but it made me hate fitness. Wow. And I did it as a very like love-hate relationship for all of my 20s. And I wanted to change that. And I remember seeing one of your many viral videos of you losing 90 pounds. But what stuck out to me is how strong you were and being in the gym and loving weightlifting. Mm-hmm. And that's when I saw that you had the Slay app. So I downloaded the Slay app. That's what I used to prepare for my wedding. No. And it completely changed my relationship with strength training and made me fall back in love with the gym.
Wait, I had no idea.
I know.
That's amazing.
That was all you.
Oh my gosh.
So I have a lot to thank.
That's so special. That seriously means the world, because I feel like a lot of us have, so many of us women have gone through periods of time where we over-restricted, over-exercised. It can easily become a negative relationship. And for me, it was like so much of a mental health journey at the same time, and weights did so much for me. So to hear that it did that for you is incredible. Was the competition during pageant years?
No, it was right before. So I had lost all that weight, and then I got scouted to compete. And that's also when I started modeling. So I had this brand new body and was really beginning this whole new chapter and this whole new journey. But the problem was I didn't do the mental transformation. That when I went into my fitness journey, I had this false idea that I think a lot of women especially have, that if I lose weight, then I will be more valuable, then all my problems are going to go away.
Yeah.
And I started getting a lot of that attention that made me feel like my problems were starting to go away, until I realized that I just took myself with me. I was just in a smaller body.
Like you're still insecure, but you're getting the validation.
But different insecurities. It just shifted.
Yeah.
And I was still in a weird, insecure place, even though I was getting that external validation.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, when you started your fitness journey, did you have the foresight to be like, I need to work on my mental health during the process? Or was it a short-term goal, like I just want to lose weight?
It was, to be honest, such an identity transformation for me. And I was in such a bad place. Like, just to be so candid, my mental health was an absolute mess. I had just come off a bunch of SSRIs. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I was severely depressed. Like, I had been cutting, trigger warning. I was abusing alcohol. Like, my life was really rock bottom awful.
And how old were you?
I must have been 23, 23.
So were you out of college at this point?
Yeah, I had dropped out actually. I was a semester away from graduating and my life was just in complete shambles that I had to drop out. I ended up going back and getting my degree, but it was crazy. Like I had cut out everyone in my life. I basically had no one and I just moved home because I was at the point where I was like, something bad is going to happen if I keep going down this path. And I moved home and it was like this reality check moment of you are in this position because of yourself. I think for many years I had a bit of a victim mentality and I would look around and try to figure out like, why am I like this? Like whose fault is this? What situation made this happen? And at the end of the day, it was because I didn't believe I deserved true happiness. And I just felt completely empty. Like I had no identity. So when I started fitness, I would say it was more because I wanted to like myself on the inside than about the weight loss, which I now am so grateful that that's how I went into it, because I wanted to be strong on the inside and the outside. Like I wanted to be able to show up in my daily life and feel confident and like I could stand up for myself. And I mean, I was even at the point where going to the grocery store was challenging for me. That's how emotional I was. So it was very much an interior journey, and the strength and the like physical transformation just kind of came with it. I will say though, I have struggled with over restricting and over exercising, but that kind of came later on actually when I was living in LA. I didn't experience it as much in my first fitness journey. It was like later on when I felt more pressure, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. And when you started your fitness journey, you were very much focused on just strength training and being more mindful of your diet. Did you have people around you that were motivating you, or where were you getting your inspiration from? Because when you're in a dark place, to take that leap forward and to actually stick to it is something that a lot of people really struggle with. So how were you able to stick with it?
So my first step was calling Greg, who is my boyfriend, now husband, and he is a bodybuilder. He's been bodybuilding since middle school. And I had watched him stay so dedicated to fitness throughout college. And I always found it really peculiar, to be honest, because as someone who like had no interest in fitness, I was eating like a Subway sandwich every day and he was going to the gym twice a day, cooking every meal. I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, I didn't understand. And then it kind of clicked for me when I wanted to turn my life around. I was like, oh, Greg could be my guide in this. And he was never someone to force it on me. He was always kind of like, I will let her do this when she's ready. So when I did call him, he was like, yeah, let's go. Wow. And he taught me the form like of weightlifting. He taught me all his favorite exercises. I essentially learned how to weightlift from like a male bodybuilder, which was kind of hilarious. And it taught me so much. I mean, it's still the foundation of what I do now. When it came to nutrition, at first, I definitely emulated the way he ate, which was kind of wild because he's like a 210-pound bodybuilder. So I was making like 6 eggs, bowl of oatmeal, blueberries, smoked salmon, like a huge meal. And it was better than what I was eating before in terms of nutrient density. I was eating like 2 muffins and a giant iced coffee with milk and sugar. And that's like a horrible way to start the day if you have mental health issues. It's like sugar, caffeine,
definitely
crash. So I really took to the internet and I started following other fitness influencers. I was obsessed with like Taylor Chamberlain, Whitney Simmons, Amanda Bucci. Like some of these people aren't even around anymore. I would listen to like Layne Norton on podcasts and Andy Frisella and just like absorb information. It became my passion. I was like, oh, like I'm really interested in this. And I'm seeing the impact on a daily basis of how my mood is, how my energy is. Regardless of the weight loss, I was noticing such a difference in the way I showed up every day that I was just wanting more and more information. So I just kept going and kept learning. And eventually I kind of found a diet that worked better for me. I tend to like high fat, low carb, to be honest. And I think a lot of women thrive on that because we need a lot of fat for hormone health. And yes, I incorporate like potatoes and things like that, but I never felt good on the oatmeal rice all day situation. Like I really tinkered with it until I found something that really worked for me. And it's evolved over the years. But yeah, it was a lot of trial and error.
And to stick with it.
Yeah.
Such a testament to the internal transformation, because I don't feel like if you weren't noticing those internal changes, the external's not enough to keep going.
So valid. Such a good point.
The external validation, that can be fuel, but only to a certain extent. Because then if you're changing your body just to get approval from other people, at some point that feels empty, right?
So true.
So when you started seeing people applauding your external appearance, was that weird for you, or were you kind of prepared for that because you had worked so much on your internal self-esteem?
You know what's funny? Like, no one applauded me.
Really?
No. I think because I was very isolated. I didn't share on social media until I was 9 months in. Until I'd lost a full 90 pounds, I didn't share.
Wow.
Very private. Only Greg really knew. My dad, yeah, a little bit, but like, I always say this story. I lost a majority of the weight at Planet Fitness in White Plains, New York. And I remember the day that I canceled my membership to go somewhere else, the guy at the front desk was like, "Did you lose some weight?" And I was like, "Yeah, literally 90 pounds, but it's okay." So it was pretty wild to me. I had to really learn how to clap for myself during that time, because no one cares as much as you do, you know? And if you're doing it for you, you're doing it for you. And it was like, no one was really, it was a very isolated time for me. Obviously, when I started posting on social media, that was the first time I really got attention for it. And I think you might be right, because I had spent that long building myself up and figuring out how to be mentally tough. It was almost like all the praise didn't even really sink in. And I mean that in a kind of healthy way. Like I didn't absorb it as much, because
that's not what fueled you.
Yeah, I was like, that wasn't why I did this. I just kind of posted it at random, not expecting anyone to really care or see it. So yeah, it's been interesting, but then evolving from that and being the face of a brand and all that.
And having millions of people with their eyes on you.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're kind of defined by it now, because people are always wanting to talk to you about your weight loss?
Yes, I do feel that way a little bit, but I don't really mind, because although for me, I guess it happened so long ago. For me, it feels like a while ago. It was 2017.
Yeah.
It was an extremely defining part of my life. And I think it's like the reason I'm here right now. So I am so grateful I went through that, and so grateful I hit rock bottom. It's very difficult for me to identify with the person before. And when people are like, "How did you keep the weight off?" or "How did you keep going?" or "Why didn't you slip backwards?" For me, it was not even an option in my head, because I was at such a low point that I'm almost terrified to slip back to that. So I've almost had to battle with myself, because I grew to have such a disciplined mind and be so tough on myself. I almost had to like undo that a little bit in order to relax and have some self-love, because it's been sort of like a evolving journey over time. But yeah, I do think I'm kind of known as like this transformation girl, which is fine with me. But you know, with launching my own podcast, like I kind of hope people see me in like multiple facets, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you are so multifaceted, and you've done so many different things. And something that I really admire is you took your story, but you've now served countless people, and you'll never even get to see all the people that you've made such an impact on, which I think is really cool, because like you just said, you didn't do this for anybody but you. But when did you switch from like, okay, this worked for me, maybe I could provide something that could work for somebody else?
Yeah.
What did that look like? Because I remember when we were having our coffee date, you were like, I was selling PDFs for people on like fitness platforms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is crazy to think that's how it started.
Yeah.
And now look at you.
Yeah.
So at what point were you like, okay, maybe I'll just like sell it for $5 and see what happens?
Such a good question. I remember this feeling of being so excited about what health and fitness had done for me. Like I was actually mind blown that food and exercise could have transformed my mental health this much, that when I posted it and I got all of these DMs and questions like, "Oh my gosh, like what did you do? What plan did you follow?" People were genuinely asking. And I think it was from women who, you know, the internet in 2017 was a bit more airbrushed. Like when we looked at fitness accounts, it was very like, 6-pack. I've looked this way my whole life. Like everything seems amazing. And I was coming from a very candid perspective of this is what I actually went through. Here are the points where I struggled. Like I was kind of sharing everything, probably because I was so lonely, but like I look back and I was like, oh yeah, I was really lonely. So I was really using the internet as like a place to connect. But yeah, getting all these requests, I was like so excited to be able to share with other people, because I was like, does anyone else realize this? Like, this is so crazy. Imagine if everyone knew that food could be so transformative and health and fitness could like really pull you out of a deep depression. Like I was someone who genuinely thought that BPD, borderline personality disorder, would ruin my life, that I would have it forever, that potentially I'd never get married. I didn't know. Like I kind of had this black hole of a future. And then this fitness journey taught me how to have a work ethic, how to show up for myself, how to keep my own promises, how to have self-love. Like those are tools that will get you so far. Mm-hmm. And I never envisioned myself being able to do any of those things. And I came out of this journey being like, I can do hard things. If I did that, what the frick else can I do? And then seeing the women in my community asking for that, I was like, oh yeah, like let's all do this. So I was just really lit up by the whole thing. And I feel like I've been lit up by it ever since. Starting with the $5 PDFs and now with the podcast, I feel like I can offer free information essentially and let people in on a conversation with an expert that maybe they wouldn't have before. So it keeps changing and evolving, but I am thrilled every time I meet someone, just like the story you told me. That is the reason I do this. I feel like I'm very mission driven. My husband is very entrepreneurial and very monetarily driven, which I think is fantastic. Like to be, want business success and you like the numbers and you want to see that grow. That's never really been my thing. I really like mission. And hearing people's stories for me is like, oh, this is so worth it,
It's probably why you guys work together so well.
Yeah, we're very different. We're very, very different.
Different skill sets.
Yes.
And I think it's really cool that he's been there since before you ever had that transformation, because obviously he saw within you what you couldn't yet see of yourself.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, he's seen me at my absolute worst and my absolute best.
I love that.
He's seen me every in between,
Did you get your diagnosis of BPD when you were in that low place? Is that the first time? Okay, so you probably felt very defined by something very scary because people weren't talking about it, right?
No, I had never heard the term before. And I kind of knew that throughout high school, I felt things on a really deep level. And when I got to college and had my first relationship, that was when I was kind of like, something feels like a bit different. I know girls, we tend to overthink things and overanalyze and we get really upset when we break up. But for me, it was just on this crazy level. And I felt like I was numbing the pain with alcohol and I found I could never be alone. And I just constantly needed things to like tolerate this pain I felt and this sort of empty hole. And it got kind of worse and worse and worse throughout college. And I ended up self-harming. And it was actually Greg who was like, I think you should see a psychologist. Like, I feel like you're unsafe to yourself. Mm. And I remember going and getting the diagnosis. And at the same time I was really scared, I also felt relief because I was like, oh, I have an answer. And it helped me then get help. Like I was in DBT group therapy, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, where you learn tools to manage emotions, like holding ice, mindfulness, different practices. I was in therapy. I was put on a lot of medication, which at the time made sense, but it also, I'm not a doctor, by the way, I'm not suggesting anyone do this, or I'm not qualified to speak on it, but it numbed me to the point where I was completely unaware of my own reality, which was really hard. And I think kind of made the situation worse. What I will say about BPD is at the time I was taught that it was an uncurable personality disorder and I would have it for the rest of my life. And I currently do not meet the criteria for BPD. So
interesting.
Yeah, I know. And really thought that I was like, oh, that's who I am. I'm going to be this way for the rest of my life. I don't have episodes anymore. I feel pretty stable. I haven't had a situation happen probably for the last 2-3 years. So you can work your way out of it. And I also think like diet and exercise were a huge part of my healing. I sometimes wonder, you know, how exasperated were my symptoms by alcohol, by sugar, by whatever I was doing back then.
Such a good point.
So I just hope that anyone listening who maybe has a diagnosis or they've struggled with mental health, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, it was a big defining part of my young 20s.
I'm sure. And you had to have so many different tools in your toolbox to also protect you on this journey of protecting your mental health.
Yeah.
Because you go through so much in your 20s as it is. Like there's so many different changes. But you mentioned going into LA, which is a whole beast. It's a beautiful beast in some aspects.
Yeah.
But it's not known for being great for your mental health. So you have already gone through this transformation. You're in a good place, but then you're in this environment.
Yeah.
Did you feel yourself kind of slipping back into struggling with mental health? Was that part of your move, or was that something that played a role in you making some decisions to leave?
It showed up differently. So we were living in Brooklyn at the time and we had already launched Bloom. I've kind of lived all over the place. I lived in Boulder, Colorado, whatever. But we went back to New York. We were in Brooklyn and COVID hit. And we were at this moment with Bloom where we were like, we really need, you know, the greens had launched. It was taking off. We were like, we need to hire a team. We need an influencer program. Like, this is the moment to really step up. And I always just felt this pull to LA. I was like, I think we need to be there for this company. I feel like it's good for our careers. It's good for fitness. It's very healthy. You can be outside all the time. New York just wasn't that. So we kind of took COVID as an opportunity to like, let's get out of here. Let's go try LA. I remember we got an Airbnb for a month. And we were like, yeah, let's just do this. So, and thank goodness we did, because LA we wouldn't have the business we have now. Our HQ is in LA. We have like 100 employees there. Wow. It was fantastic for building our team and building our business. But it definitely will test your confidence, because you're moving to a place where the most beautiful people in the world live. Everyone's fit. Everyone has plastic surgery. You go to an Air One grocery store, everyone's a supermodel. Everyone's like their own brand. So everyone's trying to stand out. People are using relationships as a way of building up their own brand. Like everyone wants something from someone. And I kind of went into it naively. I was super excited. And yeah, like there's some magic to LA, you know, like everyone goes there for a reason. But I think it did skew my vision of myself. In years of being on the internet and being the face of a brand, like I just felt a lot of pressure, especially being like a fitness influencer and, you know, feeling like I had to be in the best shape of my life all the time. That was the first time I think I ever had a weird relationship with food. Like I've always been pretty, like I don't overthink food at all. But when you restrict yourself so much, food becomes all you can think about because you're starving. Yep. So I went through a period of time where all I thought about was what I was going to eat next. How could I get away with eating as little as possible? I was doing like HIIT training, weights 6 days a week. I had a 6-pack. I was shredded. And that was like very important to me, more important to me than my mental health. And yeah, it was like I've had amazing times in LA, but I also went through this weird period of time where I felt like I had disordered thinking around food and exercise. So I actually think it was more of a learning lesson to me, because now I would never put aesthetics before my happiness. So going through that, I realized I wasn't socializing because I was so scared of being off my routine. I wouldn't go out to eat. Like I wouldn't, do you know what I mean? I relate to this so much. Yeah. That's why I keep like, I'm nodding at everything that you're saying, because I'm like, I've been there. You feel safe in this routine and it's so rigid. And even if I had to like change a workout one day, I was like distraught because it was my safety blanket. And I think some of it came from the fitness journey, because to me, I was like, that's what feels safe, because I know that worked. And if I veer off this plan, what if I slip back? So I was very much like being driven by fear. But anyway, I'm making LA sound horrible. It was awesome for us for a long time. I think I really care about community and connecting with people. And since moving to Austin, I feel like whole again. I can't describe it. Like, I felt like something was missing the whole time I was in LA. And now I feel like, oh, okay, this is what life should feel like, you know?
Girl, you are speaking straight to my soul right now, because I've gone through so many chapters where I feel the exact same way. And I think we can get trapped into this thinking that as long as things look a certain way or we have success on the outside, like the happiness will come.
Yeah.
But if you're not fostering relationships, if you're not doing stuff that genuinely brings you joy and investing back into yourself, it's only a matter of time before you get so burnt out.
Yeah. And I think I didn't realize relationships are an important part of wellness.
Yeah.
Like
Huge.
if you think back to our ancestors, they were sitting around a fire, connecting, laughing, you're not on the phone. We're looking into each other's eyes. We're connecting, we're talking. Like that does something for the soul that I can't replicate, you know?
Yep.
And LA is very social media heavy. It's, you know, a little bit dissociated to me. I'm sure there's people in LA who live a very healthy, wholesome lifestyle. But yeah, I feel like that was a period in my life that I'm out of now, and I'm very grateful for that.
How do you have balance with social media? Because so much of what you do is online. Mm-hmm. How are you able to be so present when you are with people and when you're building relationships with people and focusing on horseback riding and other things that have brought you so much joy? Mm-hmm. How do you not get so caught up in the social media world?
I feel like I'm constantly checking myself, and I don't want to sound like I've figured it out, because I haven't. And I think it's an issue we're all struggling with. And I find myself teetering back and forth. I'm like, okay, I'm deleting it this weekend. Like I'll just straight up delete the app.
Wow.
Because I found myself having like my favorite weekend doing all the things I love. And then I'd go on social media and suddenly feel bad about myself and be like,
that you weren't productive, or you didn't do as many things as you could have done.
Yeah. Like, oh, I didn't hang out with X amount of people. I didn't do this. Like it made me question what I was doing, and I don't want that. I want to live in my day and enjoy it the way I want to. So I will delete it on the weekend very frequently. But then once you have it back for a day, you just sort of, it's like the tendency to keep going back and back and back. I feel like as a creator, I have shifted away from constant posting. Like I really don't post as much as I used to. And now that I have the podcast, I feel like it's a permanent living thing. And what's so beautiful about podcasting is we're sitting here right now, we're having a real conversation, connecting. This feels so much better to me than maybe what I used to do with like talking to a screen all day and talking about myself. Like it feels very selfish, like self-focused.
Yeah.
And with the podcast, you get to learn more about other people and really sit and connect. So to me, this platform is like my favorite thing ever. And just like catching myself and having a cutoff time. And it's the scrolling that really sucks the joy out of me.
Sure does. It sure does. And I'm so aware of it, but yet I'll still do it.
It's literally addictive.
It's like, so addictive.
They know what they're doing.
I know. They're smart.
It's crazy. And then I'm
real
like,
smart.
Oh my gosh. And then I get, the TikTok drama. I get sucked into this drama that isn't mine. I'm so fascinated by it, probably because I have like no drama in my life. I'm like married.
Mine either.
I don't go
like
out.
A very quiet life.
Exactly. So I'm like, ooh, what's going on with Tana Mojo today? And I'm like,
right?
So yeah.
So you've seen all the Brooke Clinton stuff. We just have to talk about that for a hot second.
Brooke and Tana.
Yeah.
Canceled podcast.
Crazy.
Obsessed.
Yes, absolutely.
I love
obsessed.
them. They're so funny.
They're so funny.
I know.
And that's like my version of reality TV.
Same.
But I'm like, that's just, I got
the Clinton Kane situation. Nuts. And now Alyssa Violet.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh, you got to tune in.
Okay.
No, literally, I have no idea who these people are, but I'm so so invested in this drama. It's so entertaining for me.
So entertaining.
Because on the wellness side of the internet, the only drama we have is like metal and tampons. And,
yep, exactly. Which that's a whole other thing we could dive into. My God.
Should discuss.
Beginning your pregnancy journey is so exciting, but at the same time, it can be very overwhelming.
The first thing I did was begin researching prenatals because I wanted to make sure my body was prepared for pregnancy. And y'all, I read about countless companies before I decided on Ritual. Something that initially stuck out to me about Ritual is that they're mom-founded, as well as vegan and non-GMO verified, gluten and major allergen free, and all the ingredients are made traceable. I ordered the lemon prenatals, and I love that all the nutrients were packed into 2 easy to swallow capsules, and I also noticed it was really gentle on my sensitive stomach. Now, at my first OBGYN appointment, my doctor asked which prenatal I was taking, and when I said Ritual, she smiled and said that's what she took for her pregnancies and how much she trusted Ritual. When it comes to prenatal multivitamins, you want a formula backed by research and transparency. Mom-founded Ritual puts in the work and shows you the proof. Visit ritual.com/morethan and 25% off your first month of Ritual will automatically be applied at checkout. That's ritual.com/morethan for 25% off. Something that I realized I haven't asked you yet, and I don't know any part of this story. At what point were you wanting to develop blooms? Like, why were you wanting to have a green powder at all? Was it for you, or did you see the brand? Did you see what it could become?
So we started sampling for Bloom in 2018, and it was actually Greg who was like, I would come home with all these supplements from GNC because I was like, I want to be on my fitness journey. Like, I wanted a pre-workout, I wanted a protein, and I'd come back with this stuff, and he would read the label and be like, no, like, take that back. You have anxiety. You can't take something with that much caffeine. Like, this is crazy. So I kept taking it back, and I couldn't find something that was like for me. So the first thing we actually developed was a pre-workout. We made an all natural pre-workout. It had like a low amount of caffeine. It was all about focus. Looking back, the flavors were pretty nasty, but like we were just,
but it did the trick,
trying to figure it out. And I really made it for me. And I remember brainstorming the name. We were in the car in Colorado, and I was like, I want it to represent transformation. Like, for me, for all the women in my community, like, we're all trying to become the best version of us. Bloom, that's it. And now I think about that, I'm like, so crazy that happened in a car, and I like sketched the logo on a piece of paper in the car.
I just got goosebumps.
It was so wild.
In Colorado.
Yeah. And had no idea that anyone would even like it or care about it. Like, it really was like this passion project. We're like, let's see if this works. That's what our whole business has ever been, was just like, we wanted to do it. No intention of it being a huge company, no intention of anything. We were clueless. We had no idea what we were doing. Wow. So we sampled all of 2018. We launched, and we did everything ourselves. We built the website. We took the photos of the website. I helped design the labels myself. Like, we had a little pattern on the label, and I did the pattern myself. There was like a picture of a coconut on the coconut one. I bought the coconut and took it was crazy. Like,
I gotta see these photos.
These labels were not cute. I look back and I'm like, oh my God. But if you look back and you're not embarrassed, you waited too long.
Yep.
In my opinion. Like, you should look back and cringe. If it's like your old content or whatever it is, like, be embarrassed. That's a good sign.
Well, you started.
Yes. Too many people talk about what they want to do, and they don't actually just do it. You know, they wait until it's perfect. So launched in January of 2019 with 3 pre-workout flavors. I don't remember how many units we did. It was probably like hardly any, but they sold out. So we were like, okay, people want this. So we kept going. It was very like gym focused at the beginning. We did EAAs, we did protein. And it wasn't until, I want to say 2020, right before COVID, that we started formulating for greens, because I really didn't love eating vegetables, and I was like, I need to be getting my greens in. So we wanted to create a greens, but that it tasted good, because there were a couple greens on the market, but they all tasted horrible, and there wasn't this like for women greens. So I remember taking it on a trip to Puerto Rico, and it was actually the trip I got engaged on. So we ended up drinking and eating a ton, and I was like taking the greens and just noticing I felt so much better, like less bloated, less hungover. And I was like, okay, I think we have the formula. Like, it tastes good. Launched it. It really resonated with people. I think it was like just the perfect time. Like, COVID was starting to hit. People were worried about immunity and wellness. I think it made sense. Like it was just like the perfect product, and that was what took off. And we kept selling out, restocking because we couldn't afford to keep it in stock because it was so expensive to get more units, and all of our money was in Bloom. Like we didn't take a loan, we didn't get an investment. It was all of our money.
Wow.
So we basically had no money. We had no money.
That had to be so scary.
Yes.
Like everything was on the line.
Totally. Like Greg and I are very, not risk adverse, like we're down to take a risk.
Good for you guys.
Him more so than me, but we were like, let's just freaking go. And we just kept restocking. And it just resonated, and that's what took off. And then we hired our first employee, and ever since that, we've just kept going.
And you guys scaled quick.
Yeah,
we did. Huge headquarters. You said you have 100 people at your headquarters? Mm-hmm. That's wild.
Yeah.
And it really hasn't been that long.
No,
if
I
you
guess
think about
not.
it.
It feels like a lifetime, but
I'm sure it does. You sure were busy in your 20s, because didn't you just turn 30?
Yes.
Welcome to the 30s club. Thanks. It's so much better.
It feels really good. Like I thought I would be freaked out, but I'm not.
Let's talk about that for a hot second, because I was terrified before turning 30.
Really?
Because I had this like ticking time bomb in my head almost. And it's like, if I didn't accomplish enough before I turned 30, then did I waste my 20s?
Wow.
And it was such a psychological battle for me. And I think there's no right way to do your 20s, but I feel like I got married later in my 20s. I didn't really know if I had a sense of who I was. Trying to start a business, it wasn't necessarily successful. And it was almost like something was going to change the moment I woke up when I was 30 years old. And it didn't. It was just like, if anything, I know my community so much more. Like I have closer relationships in my life. I don't feel like I'm such a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I have a stronger sense of self. Like, I don't know what happens when you turn 30, but did you experience any of that as well?
You know, the one thing I had in my head, which is so silly, but I always told myself I will have a child before I'm 30, and I don't. We were talking about this. I started trying last year with my husband, and it's been a journey. And I told myself, I'll have kids before I'm 30. And I think that was the one thing that made me feel a little weird, that I was like, oh my God, am I an old mom? Like, did I wait too long? Like, those are all things that we like plant in our heads that we hear from someone else, you know? And I don't really feel that way anymore. And I agree with you. If anything, I'm like way more confident than I ever have been, way more happy, way more connected. It just isn't as big of a deal as I thought it would be.
No, it's really not. And I'm hoping it's going to be that same type of feeling when we go into any new chapter. Like, I think like 40s, where I'm like, that feels so long ago, but so does 20s. Like,
I know.
And it goes by quickly. But I appreciate that you brought up your fertility journey, because you've been so transparent about it.
Yeah.
And when I made the decision to come on the podcast and talk about my miscarriage last year, it was so healing for me, because I didn't feel like I had anybody else to really talk about it with, because I didn't want to upset the people that were close to me. That it was, my husband was doing the most he could, my family, my friends, and it's not that I wanted to like continuously talk about it, but I just felt like I was the first person that had ever experienced this, because I never talked to somebody else that had gone through it.
Wow.
And it was such an emotional journey, and I was so overwhelmed by the amount of women that were like, thank you for talking about it while it's happening.
Did you get a lot of responses?
More than I've gotten on anything else I've ever put out there.
Wow.
Because so many women are dealing in isolation. And there's even women close to me that were like, I've never talked to anybody about the fact that I went through it. And these are people that I'm close friends with. And after going through any type of fertility journey, I mean, we joked earlier that it's like you avoid getting pregnant your whole life, right? Because you assume and you're told that like you can get pregnant so fast and then it's going to ruin your whole life. Or then when you make the decision that you're like, okay, like I'm ready to dabble in it. You're like, I'm going to get pregnant instantly. Like I have to breathe and I'll be pregnant. And then when it doesn't happen like that,
you're like, what's wrong with me?
What's wrong with me? And since you are so connected with your body, since you've been on such a long journey with your body, have you started to kind of have any type of issues with your relationship with your body while going through a journey like this? Because I know I did.
I've had moments, and I feel right now very at peace with it, very hopeful, very optimistic. But a couple months ago, we had been trying probably for like over 6 months at this point. And every month I was testing, and like just so many tests, the ovulation test, the pregnancy test, reading symptoms, like, am I pregnant now? What's going on? And yeah, like I had a really dark couple days where I was like, this is making me feel so bad about myself. I felt so obsessed. It was genuinely all I could think about was getting pregnant. And I feel like as women, we put a lot of the pressure on ourselves. We're like, this is my fault. This is my burden to bear. And everyone just tells you to relax because the stress doesn't help. But it's like, someone could tell me that a million times and there's no way I'm going to relax. It was just...
It's all consuming.
It's all consuming. And it often has to do with the guy too. Like, you know, it's a joint thing. And to get pregnant, the miracle that has to take place, like everything has to come together at the perfect moment. And now that I know that, I also spoke to a soul reader. Yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh.
Which is not really my vibe, but I hit a point.
Was it?
Life-changing.
Was it really?
I hit a point where I was like, I'm devastated. I'm desperate. Like, I need some glimmer of hope. And I got on with this soul reader, Nikki Novo. I've interviewed her actually. And I didn't know what to expect, but I went into it with the question, like, am I going to have a baby? Like, when is this baby coming? And we spoke for an hour, and the way she does her reading is very interesting. And she knew things about my life that she could have never have known from the internet. Like, I didn't share any of it.
Does she go by soul reader, or is she like, how does she know this stuff? Is she an intuitive? Like,
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And she like closes her eyes and she sees like color and she interprets things. But she basically said, she calls it a soul baby. When your baby is out there, you're just not pregnant yet. She was like, your soul baby is waiting. It's a she. And I like broke down crying because I like always have known I'm going to have a girl. I always say this and I'm like, if I have a boy, I'm going to be jaw on the ground shocked. But she was like, she's waiting. She's just waiting for the right time because you guys are so busy and she doesn't think you're ready yet. And this was like January, March time. And it's funny because I feel like Greg and I recently, our schedules have been better and more flexible. And I just feel more and more ready, if that makes sense. But anyway, whether or not it was legit, it made me feel so much more patient because I was like, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It just needs to be the right time. So anyway, yeah.
I think it's important to be able to talk about the fact that just because you can talk to people about your journey doesn't mean it's not hard. Doesn't mean you don't still have those doubts, where I resonate with that so much that there was a big time where I kept losing trust in my body almost, that it's like, I've taken such good care of you and yet you're not doing the one thing that you were designed to do.
It's like a resentment kind of.
That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
That it was such a resentment.
I felt that with like acne before because I've struggled with my skin for so long. I felt like, why is this happening to me? I'm like the healthiest person I know. Like, how is this possible? But it's really about like having grace with yourself and having self-love. And I found too, talking about it on the show, seeing the feedback was so helpful. Yeah. Because it really feels like you're being, I don't know, you're in a group, like you're in a community, people get it. And if it's helpful for them, you know.
And it doesn't feel so isolating. Going back to even when you started your fitness journey, feeling so isolated. And I think it's easy when you go through any type of huge life changes, but especially for a woman, if you want to become a mom and you're struggling to do that, it is isolating.
Totally.
Because it's impossible to not think about it all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're not talking about it, it's like, it doesn't mean it's not weighing on you that much more. But I found taking the focus off of just my struggle and realizing that I was a part of a larger community. Really made it more bearable.
Totally. And I'm even finding here in Austin, I'm meeting more and more women who are going through IVF or they've been trying for a while. Like, it's really nice to have, or even people with new babies, and I'm just asking them a million questions. Like, it's really nice to meet women who are in the same part of life that I am, you know?
Totally.
I also feel like everyone is like pregnant. Like Hailey Bieber is pregnant. Yeah. Pookie.
Pookie's pregnant.
Pookie. I'm just all the announcements on my page, and I always save them because I'm like, oh, these are good ideas.
There you go. See, you're preparing for it.
I'm preparing.
And it's all right timing, and you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And also just preparing your lifestyle for it too, because you guys are busy. I don't know how you juggle everything that you do. You came out with a brand new launch today, which is massive.
Yeah.
Do you feel like balance, quote unquote, whatever that looks like, do you feel like you've achieved balance at this point in your career, or is it still just like grind time and growth time?
I feel like I've achieved a lot more balance since moving to Austin. I mean, yes, I travel a lot for work and I have days where it's like crazy. But then, for example, today, my day is kind of chill. Like, yes, the launch is happening, but I think I'm lucky that I have Greg, my husband. He's the CEO of Bloom. He manages the whole team. His life is crazy. Like, he is working 24/7, and we set aside dedicated quality time with each other. But it's tough. Like, being married to an entrepreneur and a CEO, you just sort of need to accept that your life is going to look a little bit different to a normal couple's maybe. But having him, he's so entrepreneurial. This is like him to his core, and he loves it so much. And I appreciate the fact that he's off in LA right now grinding, and I'm here doing the things I love, like podcasting, being creative, strategizing, working with my little podcast team, you know, still very much involved with Bloom, but I'm not running the ship and I'm not managing the teams. I don't love managing. It's not my thing. I feel way too sensitive. Like, I read everyone's emotions. I'm like, is everyone okay? Like, it's just too much for me.
Did I hurt your feelings?
Oh my God. Worst case scenario. I've had to fire people before, and it's so awful. I was like, never will be doing that again. And then Greg can just, he's not a mean person, but he just sees business as business, and he can have a conversation and be like, done, on to the next.
That's a gift.
It's a gift. Yeah.
Truly.
It is not.
And
my
I don't
gift.
know if it's men versus women. I don't know any women that are able to not get emotionally wrapped up.
No, we're empaths. Like,
such empaths.
Yeah. But that's a skill too.
It is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's such a skill.
That's why it's such a huge benefit to you that you have your husband as a co-founder and as the CEO, because you get that yin and yang with somebody you fully trust.
Totally. But I am very grateful my life looks what it does now, because in LA and even before that, I mean, for many years, like, we did not leave the house. Like, we were working 24/7. Bloom was like my whole life. So yeah, it's a lot better now.
Transitioning to develop community and friendship. I mean, you're in a brand new place. You haven't been here that long, but I feel like you have a really strong community. Was that something that you actively sought out immediately? I know there's a lot of our listeners that are moving to new locations and they're trying to build friendships, but don't really know where to begin.
Yeah.
What was helpful for you?
So this is so cheesy, but Greg and I drove our van from LA to Austin. That's how we got here. So we have this like outdoor van with a bed and a kitchen, and it's like, we call her Brussels Sprout. So we drove Brussels.
Why Brussels Sprout?
Because she's green. And I was like, I want like a name that's like a rolling green thing. So her name's Brussels Sprout.
Love it.
We took Brussels Sprout all the way from LA to Austin, and I had a lot of time to just think in the car. And coming to Austin, I knew I wanted to set intentions for what I wanted my life to be like here, because LA was tough for me at a certain point. So I knew coming here that I wanted to spend more time doing things I love, like horseback riding, cooking, walking, just like simple things. And then making friends was a really big pillar. And I was like, I'm going to really dedicate time to making friends. So as soon as I got here, I said yes to getting coffees. I met up with people. I showed up at dinners and events and kind of went out of my way to meet girls here. And I have to say, everyone here has been lovely. Like, every event I've been to, the girls are actively trying to connect and make friends. It wasn't really that way in LA. Here, people are so nice. I don't know if it's like people Southern hospitality so nice. Or even in a Pilates class, you can say hi to someone and you're like making friends and getting their number. It's wild.
And they also don't want something from you.
No.
Which has been a really nice shift.
Yeah.
That you can genuinely just have friendship.
It's not like a clout environment. It's very like down to earth, chill. Nothing's too fancy here. We're all just kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I've met a lot of girls in a similar place in life to me, but I will say like it takes effort. Adult friendships take effort. You know, you have to reach out and make plans. You can't just wait for people to reach out to you. I've been pretty mindful about that and making sure I kind of go out of my way to extend invitations to my house and make sure I'm putting an effort in at the same time and checking in on people and really listening and giving advice when asked. And just like it's kind of, I guess, a little bit of a new thing for me to focus on this because I've been so wrapped up in work for so long. Yeah. But it is so beautiful to have female friendships and not rely on my husband too much, because I used to do that. And our men or women, whoever you're with, I used to rely too much on Greg for emotional support. And there's only so much
they can give you.
Yeah. Like you need to have different buckets, and I have different friends who help me with different things. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's been really awesome.
Such a good point. That's such a good point, especially when you put so much of your happiness on somebody else to fulfill and to fill cups that they can't fill.
And I went through that. Like I did that for a while.
Me too.
And I was really codependent with Greg, and to the point where I like didn't really want to do anything without him. I was like, come with me to the grocery store. Come with me to this. Now I like love doing things alone. I have my horseback riding. I like cook. I do my own little errands. Like I have a whole life outside of him that when I come and hang out with him, it feels really special, and we do things together that we like love. And it's been so healthy for our relationship. Like I feel like our relationship right now is the best it's ever been, but it took time to get there. You know, I feel like with the internet, sometimes people give the appearance of like relationships being perfect. There's a lot of like, oh, we're kissing and everything's beautiful and we're so in love. And I just want to be real. I've been with Greg for 10 years and our relationship has grown and evolved so much during those 10 years. And it took time to get to where we are now.
And it ebbs and flows in different seasons. You know, it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but that doesn't mean the relationship's bad.
I love that. I love that. Ebbs and flows was like something my therapist told me, I think, and it changed the way I thought about my relationship. And I feel like on TikTok, we see content that's like, if he's not this, this, and this, then he's the wrong one. If he's not making you handmade bouquets every day, then he's the wrong one. It's like, let's be real. You know?
Exactly. And I love to give out, I accidentally fell down the rabbit hole on TikTok of giving relationship advice, which was never my intention ever. I did a one-off video about my husband and it went viral. The only one that blew up.
No way.
4 million people later. If I talk about anything but dating or relationship advice, no one cares.
What did you say?
It's this video. So this was probably about a year ago. I was saying that the characteristics that you see in somebody when you're dating are only going to get worse or get better as your relationship progresses. So basically like marrying the nice guy, that like I saw those characteristics in Brendan when we started dating 10 years ago, that now as a husband, they're only 10 times better. But I always saw it there, that I think a lot of people will go into relationships with like fixer-uppers, that if I could change them just enough, or if this X, Y, and Z happens, then we'll be good.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that being in a relationship with somebody else that you view as a project is beneficial when you're trying to be in a really healthy relationship. But then I also think about the fact that being in a healthy relationship is growing together. Yeah. And becoming different people. Totally. Because I'm an entirely different person than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I feel
and I'm sure you
way.
are too. And you also, it almost contradicts what I just said right there, because when you were with Greg in the very beginning, you were at rock bottom. I know. And now look at you.
I know. But I think what you said before is right, that he saw beneath my actions. Yep. Because I wasn't someone that ever had bad intentions or I was like doing it to hurt other people. I was hurting myself because I was in pain, but I wasn't a bad person. And I agree with you. I think of that Megan Fox interview that went viral where she was, what did she say? She was like, don't fall in love with the potential of someone.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, I do too. I absolutely agree with that. And I do think that with social media, obviously you have to use a little bit of common sense when you look at social media, that like, just because like Pookie and Jet are in my mind right now, that I'm like, just because she comes home from vacation and has 3 Dior bags doesn't mean that if that's not happening, you're in an unhealthy relationship.
So crazy. And I love that it's like, we're used to it now.
So it's just, that's just like, oh, well, what now?
But she also,
I'd love to see it.
She's like crying, and also her pregnant, and he's like, you're so hot pregnant. Like, you look even better pregnant. Like, oh my gosh.
And I'm like, how?
The Chick-fil-A in bed.
Chick-fil-A in bed
is wild.
I'm like, yeah, I haven't had that. But
No.
I still have a wonderful husband.
Yeah.
But I don't get any Chick-fil-A in bed.
Me neither,
ever.
girl.
I don't get Dior bags when I come home.
Me neither, girl. It's okay.
You know, that's okay.
I'll keep sending him the video, but we'll see.
Exactly, just to, see what
By
happens.
the way.
Just a little love tap there, just to see what you're missing out on. Now, tell me, what does a typical day in the life of Mari look like now? I'm a big morning routine girly.
Okay.
That's the only steady constant for me, because every day, obviously for you too, being an entrepreneur can look so different. Mm-hmm. But do you have non-negotiables in the morning that you've like safeguarded to make sure that if I start my day this way, I know I'm set up for success?
Yes, totally.
Okay,
Love a
hit me.
morning routine.
Love.
I will say I'm a tad more flexible now than I used to be, because I, again, was so rigid back then, down to like the minute, that I almost took away the joy of a morning routine. So now I'm a bit more flexible, but I wake up around 6 a.m. First thing I do is throw on some gym clothes, kind of get ready. I go on a walk with my dog right away. So I'm like outside trying to get sun in my eyes, unless it's dark, it's too early, then, but getting outside, I try not to go on the phone, take him out, and then I do some kind of movement. So I either weightlift in my garage, or I do Pilates, or I go walk the trail. Generally I'm weightlifting for about like 45 minutes. Then I'll have... what's next? Then I'll kind of take my supplements. I'm on this gut health journey right now because I had to take antibiotics for H. pylori, which is like a gut bacteria, which was a big reason for my skin issues, it turns out.
How did you discover that?
A lot of gut testing. And my husband and I both had it. So we both had to do it. Yeah, you actually pass it back and forth between your spouse.
No way.
Yeah, which I didn't know.
And that's obviously something that you wouldn't have known without gut testing. Mm-mm. And is the only way it acts up is in your skin?
No, everyone has different symptoms. Wow. So for me, it was acne. For Greg, it was like fatigue and sort of autoimmune symptoms. Yeah. So anyway, I'll take I have a peptide I'm taking for gut health. I'll take glutamine. I'll take my greens. Like I kind of load everything up. And then I have a steak for breakfast.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Eggs break me out at the moment.
Okay.
I love eggs, but I can't eat them right now. So I'll have a steak. I'm a big protein girl with berries.
Yum.
I really I guess my non-negotiables are like going outside, grounding, like I go barefoot on the grass, protein, movement, tons of water. I do red light pretty frequently. So I'll sit in front of a red light for like 10 minutes, either morning or night.
What do you notice that does?
I feel like for me, I'm doing it for like acne scarring, but I know it's great for inflammation. It's a good mindfulness moment. Sometimes I'll listen to, so I love the app, Superhuman.
I love that app.
Oh, you do?
So much.
Oh, cool.
It's so good.
I love it too, because they're like meditations you can do while you're doing something else, which is kind of a vibe.
Such a vibe, because I can't sit there with my own silent thoughts. Can't do it.
No. So this, if you're someone who like leans on the anxious side, or you're maybe more depressed, listening to something positive and having that mindset for the day, like I'm ready, I'm excited, I'm grateful, that puts me in such a better headspace for the day. And nowadays, I used to start work like right away. Now I don't start work till 10, which for me feels
good for you,
easy breezy. So
you have a little bit of a day before you go into your work day.
I feel that way.
That's great.
So I'll like meet up with a friend for coffee or for a walk or something that just like feels fun and good. And then I'm ready for work by 10. Sometimes I'm recording. Sometimes I have Bloom meetings. We've been traveling a lot for work lately. I'm editing videos, whatever I'm doing, coming up with creative campaigns. It really, really varies work-wise. And then the evening for me is also pretty important.
Oh, mine too.
Because that sets you up for the best next day.
And just to be able to unwind, get a good night's sleep.
Oh my God. Crucial.
So important.
8 hours plus.
Absolutely.
Anything less, I'm not a good person.
No, me neither. Do you track your sleep at all?
Yeah, with the Aura.
Oh, how do you like your Aura?
Oh, I'm obsessed.
Yeah?
I'm obsessed.
Okay, I feel
they
like
don't
I
answer
need
my
to get
DMs, but I'm obsessed.
You know what?
They won't sponsor me, but I'm obsessed.
Ridiculous. They should. They really should. So when it comes to all the different ventures that you've done, including podcasting, you've talked about how that's your sweet spot right now and how much you love it. Obviously, it's my favorite part of what I do, anything work-wise, because I get to just connect with unbelievable badass women. Where did the inspiration for your podcast come from?
Yeah.
And what is the future of what you want this podcast to develop into?
Ooh, great question. So I guess I launched it last year, and the year before I had the opportunity to guest on some other shows, and I just had a really good experience, and I really enjoyed like talking as a form of communicating. That sounds silly, but when you grow your career on Instagram, you get used to like condensing things to 30 seconds or a minute, and it just isn't enough to share like a full story or full topics. And as I said before, I felt like Instagram was very self-focused, and I was like, this is not what I want my platform to be about. Like, I want to learn from other people. I feel like my wellness journey is forever evolving. Like, it didn't just stop when I lost 90 pounds. It has continued, and I'm still learning what feels good. So it was really like an evolution from my Instagram. And I was like, let's evolve this platform. Let's get experts on the show. I feel like I'm in a privileged position when I get to have a naturopath and I get to talk to these people. I want my followers, wherever they are in the country, whatever their situation is, to be able to get the information that I'm getting. Because to me, it's mind blowing. Yeah. Like, I just had someone called Callie Means on the show, and he was a big food and big pharma consultant on the inside, and he could see the marketing tactics they were using to get people to essentially poison themselves with, like, you know, crazy ingredients and whatever.
That's crazy.
And now he's out of it, going on shows, kind of exposing them, which is wild. My mouth was like open the whole interview. I couldn't believe the information he was telling me. And just things like that light me up so much. And I never wanted to be a fear-mongering style. Like, I don't want to just frighten people. I want to give solutions and suggestions. So I do a mixture of guest interviews and solos where I talk about my fertility or my acne or whatever I'm going through. I feel like something that has come easily to me is sharing, regardless of how personal it is. Like, perhaps I shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
I hope people don't feel like, I never want to feel like I'm telling people what to do or I'm preaching. It's just like, the more we know, the better, and the better actions we can take around our personal health. And I think in the US, unfortunately, we do need to be our own advocates and research, because no one's there to help necessarily. Like, you really need to look out for yourself.
Yeah.
And know what's the best for you. And the only way you can really do that is educating yourself. And I guess now that I'm talking about it, at the beginning of my journey, podcast was so helpful for me. So now that I can kind of do that and add value into other people's lives, it feels really, really good.
Yeah. It's so cool to see that something that benefited you so much at one time is now benefiting so many other people through you.
Thank you.
I just feel like everything is very centered by giving back to other people instead of you holding on to information that you've learned. And I think that's really cool.
We're not gatekeeping.
No gatekeeping.
Not here.
Well, I feel like I truly could talk to you all day, every day. But something that I like to do to end our episodes is I find that a lot of our female guests especially struggle taking a moment to think in the last week, what was something that you're proud of yourself for, whether it's personal or professional, just taking a moment to tap yourself on the back a little bit.
We just launched an energy drink at Bloom.
Major.
Which is a whole new product category to be in, and it's a very competitive category. And I just felt like there were not female energy drinks on the market that I loved. And I feel really good about this product, and the excitement of the community is really hyping me up, and I'm really proud.
You should be. You've built quite the community. It's very impressive.
Thank you. You as well.
Well, thank you for giving me your time and for sharing your story with me. I appreciate you so much. For all of you watching or listening, make sure you're following the More Than podcast, and I will put all your information in the show notes where people can follow you as well.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. That was so fun.